the technology adoption lifecycle. In the technology, so this curve, you've seen this curve many, many times. When new innovations, or importantly for us, new product categories, because that's what we care about. When new product categories appear on the market, adopters self-segregate. Okay? Self-segregate along an adoption curve. Now, I'm going to talk about each one of these, but this is more or less the way that the adoption life cycle is talked about. We have the innovators, who are basically the first set of adopters. They're usually up to 2.5% of the market. The early adopters are about 13% of the market. The early majority is about a third, late majority about a third, and then the laggards, which is 16%. I'll talk more about all of them, okay? But the first thing to know about them is that they're going to self-segregate, okay? Now, let me give you the one slide to understand the extremes, right, from the adopters, okay? The first thing to know is that the very early adopters have a point of reference in the future. So when they think about adopting a product, they're not thinking about the past, they're not thinking about the present, they're thinking about the future. So think about your product and think about where the mind of your customer is. Is it in the past, in the present, or the future? Okay? So, for instance, a solar adopter would be where? Yeah, absolutely, right? And whereas a, coal plant adopter would be where? In the past, right? It's a 100-year-old technology. Risk profile. Early adopters can deal with uncertainty. In fact, many thrive with uncertainty, okay? Whereas the very late adopters do not want any uncertainty at all. They want their products to be like a fridge. Plug it in, it works, okay? That's it. I don't want to know how it works. I just want to plug it in and it works. And cheap, please, right? So uncertainty, risk profile is very important. Comfort level with the status quo. The early adopters, change it now, quickly. Yesterday, please, right? Whereas the very late adopters are like, no, right? This is the way we've done it for, this is the way my mom did it, and her mom, right? Back to the Middle Ages. I'm cool with this. Does that make sense? I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but not really. Educational level. The very early adopters, in general, have a higher level of education and technology savvy. They don't have to be engineers, they don't have to be scientists, but they can be dangerous enough in terms of knowledge of technology. Does that make sense? Whereas the very latest adopters are not, right? Are not techies, are not tech savvies, and so on. Income level, generally speaking, earliest adopters, higher income level, later adopters, lower. And usually the curves go like this in most of these dimensions. Socialization networks. The very early adopters socialize. Inside, outside, everywhere. Okay? They look for information anywhere, everywhere. Okay? Whereas the very latest adopters are more into their own social and business networks. Okay, it's more of an internal thing. Openness to new ideas and innovations, by definition, the early adopters are very open. In fact, many of them seek out these new ideas, okay, and innovations actively.
Should all of these different characteristics be in the targeting matrix that we make? Because I think that they're a perfect way to kind of segregate the customer.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Now, the fact that, you know, all these characteristics are part of what will be your first set of adopters doesn't make it a market. Does that make sense? You still need to go with the pain. Sure. Now, once you know the pain, then you have to know this in order to target.
You do this to segment.
Yeah. You do this to segment and target, right? Yes?
I'm curious if the niche market follows the same characteristics, or would they lean more towards the left or the right?
The niche markets, everything is a niche market, right? Think of markets as everything is a niche market, whether it's a $10 million niche market or a $10 billion niche markets. We're going to follow the same, you know, pattern for any market. Now, the size of this, I haven't talked about the size of these markets. This market could be, you know, residential, you know, if you sell solar PV, could be, you know, residential homeowners in the Bay Area. It's a small market. Or it could be, you know, homeowners in the United States. Does that make sense?
What about, let's say, a luxury sports car market? It's hot when it's new.
No, it's not hot when it's new. Most cars fail, right? Not technically, but fail to penetrate any market. And an internal combustion engine car will be basically, is it a new category? Is it a new category?
Could be.
Tell me why a gasoline car would be a new category. What would make it a new category?
If it has other fundamental features.
Like what?
Like when I forget what Lamborghini, when they came up with the doors that went up, it's still a gasoline car, but it was something new.
Does new make it a new category? I mean, what you're making is good points, but does innovation make it a new category?
The Lamborghini with a hot tub is still a Lamborghini. You know.
It's still a luxury car, right? And there's a market for luxury cars, right? But it's not a new category, right? Does that make sense? It's really not a new category.
But it addresses a consumer need, right?
Huh?
It's targeted to a consumer need, right? Like sports cars and those kind of things, though they may not be a new category. It's still a need. Your customer needs something more out of your car. And
Who is the customer?
the one who buys the sports car.
The wealthy.
No, you're defining the buyer in terms of the buyer. That's not good for this course, right? Remember last week or the week prior, what is the definition of a market segment? Okay?
So you're looking for something like a rich guy who already has a car, but he needs a...
Rich guy. Define a rich guy.
John.
Huh?
Guy.
Yeah, how much does he make or she? How much?
$1 million.
$1 million a year?
A year.
A year, okay. Tell me more.
He has 2 other cars.
Yes.
And a sedan.
Yes, what else? Does he own a home?
He owns a home.
Yeah, how old is he?
He's about 32.
Yeah, is he married? Is he married? Is he married?
No.
He's not married. 32 million bucks a year? Okay, good. See, how many of them are there now? See, a segment has to be measurable, right? How many of them?
In the country?
Where? What's your target market? Is it California? Is it the Bay Area?
Okay, let's take the Bay Area.
Okay, the Bay Area. Okay, so how many of them are there?
I'd say about 100,000 people.
100,000? 100,000 guys who are 32 and single and make $1 million a year? Give me a break. Right? So let's say it's 100,000, which is probably 2 orders of magnitude too high. But let's stay with you. Are they reachable by you?
I think, why not? They are.
Why not is not an answer. Are they reachable?
Yeah.
How? Remember, a market segment has to be measurable and has to be reachable. If you can't reach them, then it doesn't exist, as far as you're concerned.
Okay, reachable in the sense these guys need it.
No. Can you reach them? Can you get their phone numbers?
Yes.
Can you get them to your showroom?
Yes.
All of them? Okay.
Hey, you need a job?
No. This is a good conversation. Then you have a market, okay? But see what we just did. We went from rich guys, which could mean anything, to a targeted market. Bay Area is the geography. They make $1 million. They're 32. They own a home. I can reach them and all that. Does that make sense? That is a market. If it's not reachable, if it's not measurable, then it's not a market. Okay, rich guys is not a market. Does that make sense? Okay.
So the question I was getting to was whether it makes a...
So that was not the question.
Whether it makes a product category, right? Because there are consumers and they have a need. And does it make a product category? Say there are...
So that's something that I don't necessarily want to get. What's the difference between a need and a want? What do you mean they have a need? Do you really need a Lamborghini?
Oh, okay. So these guys...
Do you really need a Lamborghini?
It's a want. So does that not make it a... No, I'm just curious, right? I'm trying to understand this. So
Okay.
Does that not make it a...
So what I want to talk about in terms of, in the early adoption especially, which is what most of you are concerned about, is what's the pain? Yeah? What's the pain? I mean, if you're going to come up with a new car with gull wings, does anyone really care? Right? I mean, would you invest $1 billion in a company just to develop a gull wing? Not really. Does that make sense? What is the pain? Look for the pain. Now, leave the wants and the needs and this and that to, perfume companies. You know what I mean? In this class, we're concerned about creating new categories with, entry into new markets, with creating new markets. Now, if you're going to get into an existing market, then we're going to talk about incremental innovation, right? But by the time basically you're there, the game is already over in terms of building a winner. Does that make sense? If we want to build a winner, we have to start here. Does that make sense? Okay. Pain. Pain. Hugely important. And this pain can be actual pain in the case of, healthcare products, or it can be emotional pain, or it could be, but it's a pain. A business pain, a personal pain. The bigger the pain that hasn't been addressed, the more of an opportunity you have to create a market winner if nobody has addressed it. Does that make sense? So that's what you want to look for, not gull wings. All right, so there's a slide for each one of these. The innovators, which is the very, very, very early adopters, from 0 to 2.5% or so. Basically they want to explore. They seek out. They want to go where no one's gone before, kind of thing. They want to be a change agent. They question the status quo. And they may be in deep pain. And that's why they want to change the world. In terms of that one thing, they want to change the world. And we see a lot of them in clean energy, for instance, right now. These folks want to change the world. I mean, it's not just another product, right? And so some of the characteristics that I've talked about, they're highly tolerant of uncertainty, highly educated. They do their own research, okay? They may actually seek you out. They're willing to work with you to develop makeshift solutions. They're willing to adopt buggy products, right? That depends on the actual category, right? Your challenge may be that these folks may not have the budget. Okay, the very early adopters, the folks who want to change the world and all that. Okay, so then we talk about the visionaries or the early adopters. Again, we're following that curve. And for the early adopters, the main motivation is to seek glory, personal as well as corporate or organizational. So these folks are willing to buy your stuff. They're willing to take a risk, but they don't really care about changing the world per se. They want to get ahead themselves. Okay? So the folks who are the first on the block to buy a car or the iPad or whatever, these are the guys, right? And how do you know? Because they're going to show up and they're going to show everyone, right? Or on Facebook, right? They're smart, they're educated, but they will do a risk-reward kind of calculation. If I take a high risk here, am I going to get a high reward? Yes.
So these are the C-level executives who are going to make an improvement, like an energy efficiency improvement, not because of the fiscal savings, but because they like the greenwashing associated with it.
For instance, a lot of executives are doing that, are doing energy efficiency or solar. They're putting up solar panels, exactly, to show the world that they're doing it.
And not because they're thinking, oh, will I get fired because of this? It's like I want the positive benefits associated with it.
Well, they may get fired.
Yes.
Right? They may get fired, but if it goes well, they're going to be promoted, right? And that's why they do it.
So they think it's worth taking.
Yes. So that's why they think they're worth it, because they will get promoted in a way that they wouldn't have been promoted otherwise, right? So that's why they would take a risk. And one of the better examples of this is, the former CIO of FedEx. Does anyone know who that was? CIO. Yeah. Is the one who built their communication infrastructure. And they've gone through 2.0 and 3.0 and whatnot. Was what's his name, who became the CEO of Netscape later, right? And that project was it was a huge multi-billion-dollar project at the time. And if it had failed, the guy would have been fired. But it was a hugely successful project with all the latest technologies at the time in communication and infrastructure and whatnot. Hugely successful. It put FedEx ahead of the game. It took UPS 10 years to catch up with FedEx at least. So seek glory both for himself and for the corporation. Does that make sense? And then, of course, he cashed out at Netscape.
Barksdale.
What?
Jim Barksdale.
Barksdale. Perfect. Yeah, that's exactly who it was. Barksdale. All right, so the early majority, again, we're taking the same dimensions. They take less risk. They're more, at this point, they don't want breakthroughs. They want evolutionary stuff, right? These are the folks who'll be like, I just finished implementing X. You're coming up with Y, right? I mean, I just finished my, whatever it is, client server. Now you want SaaS. It's like, I don't really want something revolutionary. I want evolutionary because the company depends on this whole infrastructure, right? On the other hand, the best way to characterize this group is this. They don't want to be the first, but they also don't want to be the last. So they will be on the lookout for new stuff. Only they won't necessarily adopt until they think everybody else is adopting. Okay? Because they don't want to be the last. On the other hand, they don't want to be the idiots who adopt first and fail. Does that make sense? Because they take care of the infrastructure and so on. They want to know that you're in it for the long term. That's a key thing. Okay? So if you're a startup company, they want to know, will you be around when this stuff goes bang, right? Will you be around? So depending on what type of product it is, what's the life cycle of this product? 2 years, 10 years, 20 years. So in clean energy, it's tough getting here because energy is a 20, 40-year infrastructure investment. And how many companies, especially startup companies, can say with certainty that we will be around in 20 years, let alone 40? What? Right? So that's what makes this difficult in many clean technologies. But of course, being a winner in 32%, 34% of the market is huge. And then the conservatives. So at this point, conservatives mean that 50% of the market has already adopted. And more than anything, they care about not falling behind. So they don't care about being the first or anything like that. They just don't want to fall behind. So they're resistant to new ideas. They're skeptical. They just don't want anything new. Okay? They just don't. But they don't want to fall behind. So basically, after 50% of the market has adopted and all their peers have adopted, that's when they're going to adopt. Okay? So this is very much a social pressure, business pressure kind of sale. Okay? Everyone has done it. Everyone is doing it. Are you going to fall behind? Very much a social sale. And finally, the skeptics or laggards, their motivation is reject the new, right? Highly suspicious of anything new. Innovations, ideas, people, anything, right? That's new. Basically, they're going to push back on. The point of reference is in the past, not even the present. The point of reference is in the past. So when you hear a group talking about, how things used to be, right, the golden era of whatever, then you know that you're in this group, okay? And in fact, not only will they not like your new stuff, but many of them will go out of their way to detract, right? So, this solar thing, That's a communist plot, right? I mean, it's not just that it doesn't work, right? It's a communist plot. It's anti, blah, blah, blah.
Anti-American.
Exactly, anti-American, you name it. Okay, does that make sense? So a lot of these folks may actually go out of their way to detract from this technology. Okay? Electric vehicles, don't they explode and kill people and stuff? Unlike, of course, the gasoline vehicle, which, what?
My horse.
For instance, right? There's some groups, okay? But not necessarily the horse. I mean, that's like, but, it may be like, for operating systems. It may not be the folks who adopt the latest, but 2 revs behind. So if the product is in 4.0, I mean, they're on 2.0, for instance. 2.0 is stable. It's, basically the way that all their peers and whatnot have been using it, and so on. So a couple of notes before we break out. Each group is the gatekeeper to the next one. So you can't just say, oh, this is a new category, I'm going to go straight to the mainstream. No can do, right? These things have a way of going through each one of these groups. Now, it may be very fast, but it's going to go through all these groups. Does that make sense? So you don't own the category. Your product doesn't own the category. The category is going to go through its own adoption life cycle. And the strategy at each stage, and I'm going to talk about in the next hour, may be completely different. So the strategy for the early adopters may be completely different than the mainstream and the late adopters and so on. It's about the product category, not about your product. Remember, there are probably 30 companies, maybe 100, that are competing in the same category. Okay? And none of them, maybe some of them think that it's about their product, but it's not. Even if you're the market share leader, it's not about your product. So in the next hour, we're going to talk about how things change the life cycle. Yes, Marie?
So let's say when Apple first came out with the iPad,
Yes.
they would have a totally different marketing strategy aimed directly at the innovators until they reach 2.5% in their mind of the market.
Or so, yes.
And once they get past that, then they take on a different strategy.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that. In their case, it went from 0 to 100 in no time, right? But still, it had to go through all those. Now, how do you know where your product is in the adoption life cycle? How do you know? Find out what % of your target market has already adopted. Okay? And that's why you have to measure. Okay? That's why you have to know exactly how many people or companies or counties are in my target market. 1,000, 10,000, 40,000? And then you have to know what % of that market has adopted. Okay? Very, very important. Find out what %. And that's going to tell you at which stage it's going to be. Okay? Now, how do you know? And I need to break for the video. How do you know where in the market, what % of the market has adopted? Ask the customer. Okay? That's why it has to be reachable. Okay, if you can't reach your target market, then you're in trouble. Okay? So you have to call. You have to survey. You have to ask the customer. Because otherwise, I mean, if it's an existing category, then you can ask Forrester and Gartner and whatever analysts cover that category. But when it's a brand new category, there's no usage. And their opinion is not as good as yours. Or let me put it that way. Your opinion is as good as theirs. Your data would be as good as theirs. Okay? If there's no category that has been, that has started yet, then if you go out and ask customers in your target market, you'll probably have better information than these analysts. Does that make sense? You'll have better information than anybody. And you'll be in a better position to develop the whole product for this target market. Not only that, find out how quickly the category is being adopted. So what's going to happen is that you're going to decide to develop this product, but you're not going to launch it next week. You're going to launch it in 6 months, or in 3 months, or in 9 months, right? Well, you want to know not where the category is today. You want to know that. But you also want to figure out where it's going to be in 6 or 9 months, which is when you're going to launch. Does that make sense? You want to know where, or at least you want to have a good guess at where it's going to be when you launch the product. Because the product that you launch today is going to be different from the product that you launch in 6 or 9 months. Okay? And again, make sure that your market is well defined. And go back to what we did 2 weeks ago. It has to be measurable. It has to be, reachable. It has to be really well designed, defined. If you're releasing an electric car, it makes a huge difference if your geography is US or California or Bay Area. It makes all the difference. These are completely different strategies. Does that make sense? All right. So can anyone tell me? Yes?
The customers who are innovators, but they never take a decision to buy the product in the entire product category life cycle. What category do they fall into, and what strategy should be for them?
So if they don't adopt, if nobody buys, then you develop the wrong product.
No, only some customers.
Yeah.
Some customers have purchased the product, but
Yeah.
this person knows this product is good, we had adopted, but never in its entire life cycle purchases the product. So what category does it fall into?
So there's, don't confuse the category with the market, yes? So if somebody did not adopt, maybe you did not define the market well, right? I mean, you did your best to define the market, but maybe you included somebody that should not have been there, and maybe you excluded somebody who should have been there, right? So, and that's a very good point, because we can only do our best. But as long as we're within reasonable, understanding of the market, then we're good. It doesn't mean we have to be 100%. And a lot of times we need to change course. We need to, pivot, as it's called now, right? We pivot, we say, oh, okay, this was not right. Then we keep pivoting until we find the right market. So who can tell me where in the adoption lifecycle are these technologies? How about solar power?
Early majority.
Okay, people.
Of what total market?
Exactly. Who is the market? Okay, see how we're jumping? Okay, who's the market? Solar power. Solar power is what? Right? What are we talking about? We're talking about California, Arizona, US, Germany, South Africa. What are we talking about? Residential, commercial, utility? So when I ask where in the adoption life cycle, these technologies are, what do you ask back? Who is the market? Right? What's the market? Because otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. All right, let me ask again. Where in the adoption life cycle are these technologies? Solar power. Exactly. What's the market? Tell me.
California residential, single-family homeowners that are married, are well-educated, make over $70,000.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Where? In that one. Did you all hear that? Okay, homeowners in California who are married, and what else?
$70,000 a year, well-educated, credit score over 680.
And credit score over what?
680.
There you go. Okay. So in that market, where is solar power?
Early adopters.
Early adopters? So less than 2.5%. So how many homeowners are there? Hold on. How many homeowners are there in California?
22 million single-family.
22 million. Okay. And if you take out the ones who make less than 70, well, that's probably 1% of homeowners. And so we're talking about 10 million homeowners? That's your market?
Probably.
10 million. Okay. Let me get to you in a second.
Say it's 7.5.
7.5 million. All right. He knows his market.
Credit score.
7.5. Oh, credit score. That's right. So 7.5 million. Oh. Okay. 5 million. Right. That's the market. 5 million homeowners. Where are we? How many PV installations, and we're just going to talk about PV, right? How many PV installations are there in California?
Less than 1 million residential.
Much less. How many? Does anyone know? 100,000.
I was right.
Yes, 100,000, which means in that market, it's 2%. Does this make sense? 2% in that market.
I see why they're so excited.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you have a question.
Well, it's interesting. I'm remodeling my house. So
Yes.
I've been to the city of Mountain View this morning, and what they told me actually is I would put them in the laggards or in the late majority.
Who?
Solar thermal. They have out of 22,000 homes,
Yes.
one permit application per year for solar thermal, and there are always guys who
Yes.
built a swimming pool in the 70s
Yeah.
and are now 30 years after the fact, they're now thinking about
Interesting.
getting solar thermal for their swimming pool.
Did you all hear this? That is a great point. So, which underlines the importance of defining your market well and defining your product well. So if we had said solar thermal in Mountain View, there's just one application, right?
Per year.
Per year for 22,000 homeowners, right? So that's like 0.00005%. If we say PV, solar PV, in California, under these circumstances, then we're talking about 2%. The strategy for these two products is completely different for these two product categories. Solar thermal, which is solar water heater, which you know well, and solar PV. Does that make sense? Completely different. So solar in and of itself is not what we're talking about. We're talking about specific products. Yeah? Okay. Good point. What about electric vehicles? Where in the life cycle? Which market? You tell me which market. California. Yeah? But who in California? There's 38 million people in California.
Can we make it interesting?
Make it interesting.
Adoption area,
Make it
just for
interesting.
Palo Alto? Maybe.
Just for Palo Alto. Yeah.
There's only two choices, right? Pure EV is only Nissan Leaf and the other guys, right? So are you including the hybrids or no?
EV. Yeah.
So we're defining it now?
Yeah. So Palo Alto, what? Students here?
That includes the Teslas, right?
Yeah, that's the car. I mean, the product is electric vehicles. Yes?
Shouldn't you segment the market for EV because there's the Leaf on one end and there's Tesla on the other end? One is like 40,000, the other is 400K,
Okay.
right?
So you're making a good point. You can't segment cars. You segment users.
All use, okay.
Okay? So what you're asking is, are these different product categories? Does the Tesla belong in a different category as the Leaf? Does that make sense? They're not markets, right? Okay, I just want to make sure that we're in agreement there. And then you say, okay, so what do you think? Is the Tesla in a different category as the Leaf? Are they going after the same user base? They're not. Good point. So instead of EVs, should we say, what should we say? Huh? What? Luxury EVs, which means there's all of one company. Right? Because Fisker is not out in the market yet. Who else is producing luxury EVs? Nobody, to my knowledge. I mean, BMW is testing one, and Mercedes is testing, but nobody, right? So let's say Tesla. Okay, we're in the adoption life cycle. How many? Who's the market? Who's the market?
Palo Alto, male,
Male.
age 30 to 45,
Yes.
single, married, without kids.
Okay.
Income level, like $500,000.
Wow. Okay. All right. So internet IPO 30 to 45. Okay. Okay. All right. That's a market. Did you all hear that? That's a market.
And oil price to $6 per gallon.
And what?
Oil price, circumstance of oil price.
No. We're talking about now. Right now. Right? I'm not talking about, right now. Okay. So we're defining that. How many people are in that market?
How many would say?
Even if you say the whole peninsula, how many people are in that market? Ah, good question. Today. 500 people in that market?
I said 200.
He said 200.
That's it? Oh, it's got to be more than that, right? I mean, how many cars? All right, how many cars has Tesla sold?
Not many.
3,000 or 4,000, right? But basically everywhere in the whole U.S. So if it's 500, it's like, here, right? I mean, it's like full. If that's a target that if that's the market that they went after, they're really well along. If it's only 500, yes.
So I'm thinking from a mathematical, so we're looking at, this is the whole market that we size, and so they're here because of the numbers.
Yeah.
But what if you realize after launching the product that this is not really going to fulfill its destination of
Yeah.
the target market, and you
Yeah.
adjust your numbers accordingly and say, we're not going to make 200 million out of this, we're only going to make 2 million.
Right.
So this is all we have, take it all the way to
Yeah.
the cycle, go on to the next one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. You would not take it to the next life cycle, right?
Maximize your potential, move on to the next product.
So I'll talk about that in the next hour, okay? But that's a good point. So